The Budget Committee meeting for Friday the 20th of May, and I'd just now open the meeting with the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. Okay, we do have one request for leave of absence from Councillor Shoemaker. I now move that that be accepted. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Jones, thank you. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Councillor Duff, would you provide the recognition of traditional owners? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to acknowledge country and the land where we meet this morning, the Waka Waka land, and acknowledge the elders both past, present and emerging. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
So we have the agenda in front of us. Does anyone have any declarations of interest to disclose to the meeting? Conflicts of interest? No? Okay. If you do throughout the meeting, please let us know. 5.1 minutes of the Budget Committee meeting held on the 13th of May. That's at page 5, where it's recommended that the minutes of the Budget Committee held on 13 May 2022 be received. Do we have a mover? Mover? Councillor Henson, thank you. Second, Councillor Duff. Speakers? Comfortable that they're correct? Okay. Go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Okay, our first item is in business is 6.1, adoption of the South Burnett Regional Council debt policy for 22-23, statutory 010, and it is at page 10 on the agenda, where it's recommended that the committee recommends to council that the South Burnett Regional Council debt policy 22-23, statutory 010 be adopted as presented. But we'll go, before we actually get that out on the floor, we'll go to General Manager Jarvis and our Manager Finance to give us an introduction. Thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. Yes, councillors, the reason why we've brought this debt policy to your attention was to flag that the debt policy is adopted every year annually in line with our budget negotiations or our budgets. So this debt policy was developed 2 years ago and identified some borrowings there. You'll see this year it's intended that by this policy, or I beg your pardon, next financial year, is that we'll be borrowing the 800,000, year after 5 million, and the year after that 6 million. That's on page 5 of the policy, you'll see. And that is there for the upgrade of the Gordon Brook dam wall. Now, I'll just draw to your attention to, and I accept full responsibility for this, in section 3.6, proposed new borrowings, it was remiss of me not to pick that up, that it does state that there's no new borrowings for the year, but we have amended that in line with the current policies to say that we will be borrowing the 800,000 as per this policy if council still has the appetite to do this next financial year. So that's in section 3.6. So basically, Mr Mayor, this is there were some conversations had within council several weeks ago about the capacity for us to borrow again with low interest rates. So this is why I just thought it'd be prudent maybe to just for councillors to be thinking about giving we as the operational side of the council some indication about where we need to go as far as borrowings with this debt policy, having considered we still haven't set our capital budget either.
Thank you, General Manager. The proposed borrowings for the next 3 years, are on page 16, as the General Manager's alluded to. So you can see where it's indicated there that the 22-23 borrowings would be the 800,000 to commence the process with the Gordon Brook Dam. Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll get a mover. Do we have a mover? Yeah, Councillor Jones. Second, Councillor Henson. Thank you. Speakers, Councillor Jones.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just a question with the proposed 10-year borrowing schedule, considering and taking into account the cost of materials and everything else that's going up through the roof and expected to continue. Is that going to be sufficient? Is that going to be true and correct figures, do you think, or are we going to show variance? Will we need extra, through you, to Acting GM?
Yeah, thanks, Acting GM.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. At this stage, that's the 800,000, I believe. So that's the initial startup stage of the Gordon Brook upgrades, or the AFC upgrades. So, as council is aware, I've been told before, is we are working towards hopefully being able to reduce the impacts and the requirements to do that. So, at this stage, I believe 800,000 is an appropriate amount. And then once we get the determination through the risk assessment as to what the actual AFC upgrade requirements are, if we can reduce that, then that will significantly. If we cannot reduce the scope of the works that is required as it stands at this present point, yes, I believe that we will have a massive blowout. I think the last figures that we looked at was about 18.5 million, Mayor. So.
Thank you. You comfortable with the response, Councillor Jones? Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Further, Councillor Duff?
Through you, Mr Mayor. I was, that was my question about whether we were still negotiating, but also if something changed and we could, the government was kind and said, we're all good to go, you don't have to do it, do we still have to borrow that money if we've already committed to it, or can we just pull out? Is it just a guarantee that we can get the money, but if we don't need it, we don't need to borrow it? That's the question.
Through you, Mayor. I don't believe, we'll actually get away with doing absolutely nothing. There will be certain upgrades that we have to do. It will perhaps be that we do not have to open up the extra additional 80 metres of the spillway to get the overflow capacity. So regardless, I think we are still up for a couple of $1 million, but not the 18 to 24. Because if you remember, Councillor, we've got the initial upgrades, and then there's other scope works after that actually add up to about 24 million bucks.
Thanks. And Councillor, and it's been several years since we have borrowed, which has been a very good thing, but unless they've changed, and I looked at Kerry and Susan, unless they've changed it on me, but generally, once the approvals have gone through, you can hold the drawdown until pretty much almost May, June of the following calendar year, at the end of the financial year. So you draw down, so you utilise what you can until you need to draw down. If through circumstances that it becomes aware that we don't need the loan funding, there is a process where you can go back to Treasury and say, thank you very much, but we don't require this, and you can return the loan. The other aspects with the loans are particularly, and I have seen this with several councils over the years, circumstances change. So they may have borrowed it for a water network and they might need a bridge. You can't repurpose a loan for a different asset. So you would then go through the process in the following year to re-borrow for that asset rather than say, yeah. So short answer long is yes, you can return it.
You comfortable with that, Councillor?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Okay. Further speakers? No? We'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Okay, 6.2, exemptions and concessions on various special, separate and utility charges for 22-23. That one's at page 17. Okay. Manager, did you want to introduce us on that? Thank you.
Through you, Mr Mayor. Yes, this is just for our rating concessions for all of our community groups and different categories there. As you can see in the table, these are exactly the same percentages as we have currently in place for the current financial year. So it's just about looking to see whether we want to make any adjustments to any of those percentages or adjust any of the grouping categories for this next financial year.
Thanks very much, Manager. Okay, so it's recommended that the committee recommends to Council that pursuant to Section 93 of the Local Government Act 2009, Council provides an exemption on differential general rates and separate charges for properties as identified within the categories per the table below. Pursuant to Sections 120, 121 and 122 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, Council grants a rebate for various rates and charges for the financial year ending 30 June 2023 as identified in the table below and subject to the following. Property owners must notify Council immediately if there is a substantive change in land use for a property that is receiving a rate concession. Applications received during the current financial year that fall within the categories below will be granted a rates concession following the passing of a resolution by council. And if a property has been granted a rate concession in the previous financial year, the owner will not be required to reapply to receive the rate concession for the current financial year. However, proof of ongoing eligibility will be required if requested, and the table is as presented. Do we have a mover? Councillor Potter, thank you. Seconded, Councillor Henson. Speakers? Councillor Potter, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this is one policy that we don't talk enough about, because this is basically out of our pocket, helping all of these different organisations and charities. So I think this is something that's actually worth discussing in public. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you very much, Councillor Potter. So, yeah, for anyone that is watching our Budget Committee meeting, the table includes a 100% differential general rate concession, so 100% concession on rates, general rates, for CWA, youth accommodation, youth groups, scouts and guides, seniors and welfare groups, kindergartens, service and other clubs, showgrounds, race grounds, museums, theatres, heritage, sporting groups and associations, charitable organisations and community-owned halls. And that 100% rebate applies to differential general rates as well as separate rates. And then there are water access concessions as well that apply at varying levels to different organisations as there are for sewerage access. And there is no waste bin concession other than for scouts and guides being youth groups. So, yeah, it's a very good point. It's good to get that out there to the community. It would be nice once we get this resolved by council if we can get some strong media out there to let the community know that council's very much community focused. So, yeah, thank you. General Manager.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, just to emphasise the donation that council does make to these organisations. The value of those concessions actually are about $255,000.
No, that's very important to know. Thank you very much, General Manager. Yeah, that's a significant contribution, isn't it? Yeah. Councillor Duff, and we'll go to Councillor Erkins. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I know that last time we did some changes. We tweaked the water access and the sewage access with, I think it was kindergartens and different ones, but I haven't had any negative feedback. I think the community groups have accepted it all. I'm just interested to know if any other councillors have had any negative feedback around the changes we made, because we did make some changes with percentages. Yeah, so, but yeah, everyone seems happy, so I'm happy to support it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Erkins? You're fine. Okay. Further speakers? We'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 6.3, waiving minimum general rates 22-23. Now that's at 19. Again, General Manager, thank you.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. This motion is basically around, so we have some small parcels around the region that just have water bores and things like that on it, and they're small parcels. So in the past, council has made the decision that we waive that minimum general rate, so they don't have to pay, you know, the $970 on that small parcel when it's just got a water pump, sorry. And yeah, so that's what this is about. It's roughly reduces council's revenue by about $2,000 for the year.
Thank you, Manager. So the recommendation is that the committee recommends to council, pursuant to sections 120, 121, 122 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, council grants a rebate equal to the full value of the separate charges and part of the differential general rates, equal to the difference between the minimum differential general rate for the appropriate category and the rate calculated using the rate in the dollar, and the valuation for the properties identified hereunder. Any rateable land held as a permit to occupy for water facility purposes, namely bore and pump site and associated purposes only, and properties that are small parcels of land worked in conjunction with properties held in the same ownership and identified in table hereunder. And there are two properties there, Hebble Drive, Tablelands, and Bradley's Road, Waroondan. Do we have a mover? Councillor Duff, secondly Councillor Potter. Speakers? No, we'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Okay, now we're up to setting the level of concession on rates and charges for approved pensioners. for 22-23. That's at page 21. Finance. Thank you, Manager.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. This one here is relating to the Queensland government's pensioner rebate subsidy scheme. So council basically does a dollar for dollar concession under that scheme of up to $200 per annum for approved pensioners. So yeah, this one's just basically, again, the same as the current year of putting that through, so that way that concession can be put forward into next year as well.
Thank you, Manager. So the recommendation is that the committee recommends to council that pursuant to sections, 120, 121 and 122 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, a rebate of rates will be granted to all ratepayers who are pensioners and who are eligible for the Queensland Government pension remission. The rebate will be set at 20% of the differential general rate, sewerage utility charges, water utility charges, and waste/refuse utility charges, and the maximum concession granted per property shall be capped at $200 per annum. Do we have a mover? Councillor Duff, seconded Councillor Jones. General Manager, thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I'm sorry, I just wanted to highlight again for council or to the community that this concession that council awards to the pensioners reduces the income by $804,000. So that's council's contribution back to our pensioners through this concession.
Thanks very much, General Manager. Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I think, as Councillor Potter said about the previous one, we should let the community know, because this is significant, and it flags that we really do care about our pensioners. So we need to shout it from the rooftops. Thank you.
Yeah, indeed. Thank you, Councillor. Further speakers? No. Well, Councillor Jones, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. You're correct, Councillor Duff. It is great in how we respond back, but it also needs to be acknowledged that it's over $1 million that we put on our ratepayers that we shortfall on the income that we do have, and that's a significant thing that we have to cost every year. And it is something that needs to be highlighted to the community, that we do give a lot back to our pensioners and our youth groups and our community organisations. I think it's a great thing that we do, but it also is a significant thing to deal with to cover the cost of operations through our council for every year, over $1 million plus.
Further speakers? No. Go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 6.5, concession of water consumption charges, hemodialysis machines, 22-23 at page 23. Okay. Thank you, Manager.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Again, this is one that council has provided a concession for the last few years. And this one here, so we've got one ratepayer group that currently gets this concession of approximately, it equates to about $400 for next year for that 190 kilolitre rebate of water usage.
Thank you, Manager. So the recommendation is that the committee recommends to council that pursuant to sections 120, 121 and 122 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, council allows an annual rebate of 190 kilolitres on the water usage to any patient who qualifies for and operates a home hemodialysis machine supplied by Queensland Health. Do we have a mover? Councillor Potter, seconded Councillor Duff. Speakers? No, we'll go to the vote. Those in favour, carried unanimously. Thank you all. 6.6, rates modelling inputs. That's at 24. I'll go over to you again. Thank you, Manager.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, so this is just basically ensuring that we have all the right inputs that we'll put in for our modelling, for our general rates and our water, wastewater and waste to put in for next year's budget. Obviously, as we go along, if these do need to be adjusted, they can, but this was just so that, you know, we are all on the same page as to what percentages and changes will be made, and then that way we'll put them in through the modelling and put them in the budget. So based on work that's been done with the consultant at the workshop on Monday and previous workshops, so the percentages that we have provided below, so a 1.75% general rate, 6% on water, 3% on sewage, 1% on domestic waste, 6% on the waste management levy, 5% on the general rate for coal and power categories. And then underneath that, we've got the changes in the methodologies for the modelling of the rural residential categories to be reduced to the 2 categories. So Black Butt will be 1 and all the other regions will be rolled into their own category. And then the second pedestal charges for the hospitals and education facilities to be set at that 80%, which is roughly that $602 per pedestal. And then second pedestal charges for the other categories, so commercial flats, hotels, motels, caravan parks, and the other commercial categories to be set at $411 per second pedestal.
Thank you very much, Manager. This is an excellent report, an excellent way in which to get this modelling clear so that you can move forward. Thank you. Yeah, so the recommendation is that the committee approve the percentage increases and other rates input charges as per below for inclusion in rates modelling for the 22-23 budget deliberations. Do we have a mover? Councillor Jones, seconded Councillor Potter. Speakers, Councillor Jones first.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, look, we've discussed this as a council pretty thoroughly. They're not good figures for any ratepayer out there. We have a significant issue as far as operational performance across our region. 1.75%. Our inflation is going up 5.1, I believe. This year is the figure that. So the only thing that I would like to have a conversation around is the general rate for coal and power categories, whether or not we just expand that to other industry rather than just consolidate just on the coal and power. Maybe there's an opportunity there that we can look just to cover inflation across the region, because it is going to have a significant, as you know, with the election tomorrow, that's been a hot topic with the inflation rates and all that sort of stuff, and the cost of living, and how tough people are going to do it in our communities with the supposed wages going down compared to inflation and all that sort of stuff. So that's at a high level. It will certainly come down to our level and it'll affect us. So I'd be more than happy, very happy with the decisions. It's like I say, any rise on a ratepayer in this climate that we live in is going to be significant. If we don't do this, we won't be able to afford our future forecasted expenditure. The services, the infrastructure won't be upgraded to where we need to be for hopefully population growth, all that sort of stuff. It all comes into it. It's easy enough to explain, but the people out there won't. They don't want to hear the reasons why, because they are doing it very tough. They're doing it very tough. But they expect this council to deliver a level of service that is expected of us. And if we don't cover inflation and we don't cover costs of material costs, all that sort of stuff, which way do we go? We cannot be successful in supplying a level of service that the people expect. So open to further conversation.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Jones, as the mover, I know there was some discussion about this at the workshop around the point you raised, a 5% general rate increase for all industrial in light of that 5.1% inflation rate that we've got to deal with now. Would you be open to inserting a final bullet point that says 5% for all industrial and put that out for debate? Just to have that discussion, or would you prefer we just discuss that today? I think it's important we have that discussion, just to help Kerry with finance with their modelling.
Mr. Mayor, before I add that, can we open the floor just to discussion and just get the general consensus of the people of the chamber and just see where we go before I do agree to that?
Thank you, Councillor. So, Councillor Jones, as the mover, has opened the discussion in relation to perhaps 5% general rate increase for industrial properties. So we'll have that in the discussion as well. We can always add that to the motion before we go to the vote if need be. So further speakers, Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not prepared to lock in on any of these, because I just think, I mean, 5% all industrial, I'd need to see the figures and the whole spreadsheet and what that impact that has on different.
Councillor, I'm just going to interject, if you could just cease there. Just to clarify that what the Manager of Finance said, we are not locking in. So just to confirm, to be correct, we are not, I've got you on mute, sorry. We are not locking in. What we are doing here is providing the finance department with percentage increases that will be used for the purposes of rates modelling. So then that will come back to a future budget committee meeting where then those rates increases will be seen in the context of the whole budget. And once we see the whole budget, we're then able to make a recommendation up to the budget meeting as to those rates increases. So please, this is certainly not locking anyone in. These are only recommendations for modelling at this early stage. So just want to clarify that. Back to you. Thank you, Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Okay, that's fine. I just am nervous about just jumping in with a 5% in industrial and all of these things because this is live stream, so people will get the indication that that's what we're looking at. So I'm just nervous about, you know, the perception and what we're doing here. But if you think it's just to keep the whole thing flowing, I'm good with that. But certainly, I still want to be able to negotiate. Thank you.
Yeah, and for anyone watching, be it media or the community, please understand that these are simply modelling. These are modelling percentages for forecasting, for budgetary forecasting purposes. This is in no way a resolution by council that will be locked into in any way. Okay, so there are meetings to be had into the future, and council has set its budget date for the 8th, Mr CEO, 8th of July, and please, I'd ask everyone to hold your horses until the 8th of July. There will be an announcement then at that open public meeting as to what the rates increases will be. Any of these discussions up to them are certainly not locked in as such. Okay, so I want to be very clear for the community on that. There's much debate to still be had, but this will certainly give us a framework in which we can put together a budget through appropriate modelling to be able to consider and make decisions on. So just want to be clear on that. So it's a good point you raised, Councillor. Yeah, thank you. Councillor Erkins.
Through you, Mr Mayor. I also am concerned. I understand that what you're saying, but I also think that there's a big difference between a power station and a small business, and especially sometimes these things come in and it becomes accepted and it's hard to go back on them. And it also would be discouraging to industry coming in, seeing that. So, you know, I'd be reluctant to.
Thank you, Councillor. The Councillor's thoughts. Councillor Henson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, look, as Councillor Jones alluded to open it to the floor for this discussion, and that's exactly what it is. And the prime word there in the background is proposed. We're not jumping into anything, Councillor Duff. We've had these discussions for several months, and a lot of these percentage increases here we're talking
Councillor,
about.
I'm just going to call you out, point of order there. Please address the chair, not the fellow councillors.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Let's refrain from addressing councillors. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So across the board there, the percentage increases are just that, they're proposals. We've talked about that 12 months ago, and I take on board Councillor Jones opening to the floor and asking for comments, and that's just what we're doing. We are certainly not imposing a 5% at this point in time in any industrial. So, yeah, I think we've got a lot of discussions to have on this, and that's exactly what we're doing over the next 6 weeks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Potter.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, with regards to this, I'm probably happy with this as is. I'm probably not willing to change it for now, and I think it's something we do need to look into a little bit further.
Thank you, Councillor. In light of those discussions, Councillor Jones, are you happy to leave the motion as it is at this stage? Yeah, no change. Okay. Well, that being the case, any further speakers? We'll go to Councillor Jones to wrap up.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. The only reason I put that out there was just to get the opinions of the other councillors and just see where we go, because there has been discussion, and I don't disagree with any one of them. I think they're all valid points, but I just put it out there for a simple discussion because we need to cover, you know, going forward. It's going to be a difficult time, and so happy to leave it as is, Mr Mayor, and just move forward and continue on.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Jones. It is important to have those discussions. So thank you for bringing that opportunity forward. Okay, so we'll go. Shall we go to the vote? Are we ready to go to the vote? Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Okay, Kerry, you can proceed with the modelling. Thank you. Okay, 6.7, 3-year averaging at 25, where we've got the recommendation there is that the committee recommended council that the continued use of 3-year averaging for land valuations for use in the general rate calculations and the use of capping be removed. General Manager, did you want to speak to this? Manager Finance, thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. Currently, South Burnett does the 3-year averaging for valuations, difference in valuations, and we also do the capping. So it's one of the very few councils in Queensland that does do this. So the recommendation here is that we actually remove the capping, percentage of capping, and just go with the 3-year valuations, and that way we stay current, because with the capping as well, we never seem to, if there's such a word, catch up with the valuations, and then a new valuation is come again and we continue going around in circles. So it's more equitable, I believe, with the 3-year averaging to implement that to assist our ratepayers in massive increases to land valuations.
Thank you, General Manager. So it's recommended, as stated there, continued use of 3-year averaging, that go as a recommendation from this committee for the general rate calculations, and capping be removed. Do we have a mover? Yes, Councillor Potter. Seconder? Councillor Henson, thank you. Speakers, Councillor Potter? You're fine? Okay. Councillor Duff?
Through you, Mr Mayor, just wanted to know whether, because sometimes if there's a cap and there's somebody, it could be like have a massive impact on, those that have been, the ratepayers that have been affected by that cap, and they might have had a 40% increase and we've capped it. Are you aware of any that are going to have huge impacts if we do remove the cap?
Thank you, General Manager.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. Currently, Councillor, we did check and there is no one affected at the moment. Everyone now has cleared the capping and they're ready for the next valuation. So the capping actually was at 30%. So we couldn't, any increases we averaged over 3 years, it couldn't be any more than 30% there. But I couldn't answer that. I'd have to take that on notice. I'm sorry. No, I don't have that information available to me at the moment.
Councillor, would you be comfortable if we had that information brought forward in future budget meetings when we start to pull the whole budget together, so you can see that? I know we would have that data in the system there, wouldn't we, Manager? Yeah.
I'm sorry. Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor, I'm sorry. I'll just let Manager Anderson just speak to that. Apparently we do have those that no one will be affected next year, but I'll just get the Manager to confirm that for you.
Yes, through you, Mr Mayor. Yes, we did have the consultant. I went through and did a double check of what the new years. So with the new valuations and roughly the proposed rate increases that we had there, as to whether anybody would go up to or over that 30% cap, to see if anybody would be affected, and everybody from the data we currently have would be under that. So nobody would actually reach a cap for the next 3 years if we did have that included anyway.
Thank you, General Manager. Thank you, Manager. Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm very happy with that. If we've got an opportunity to remove the cap, because I know it's been not a good thing that we've got that cap, and so if we've got a year when we have not going to have any impact, that's a great outcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything to wrap up, Councillor Potter? You're comfortable? Happy to go to the vote? Okay. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Council, move on to 7.1. We have a notice of motion there. It's at page 26. The notice of motion is that the 22-23 capital budget, the CapEx budget, includes the following unsealed road renewal projects: Lennigans Road, Nanango, ripping, compacting and application of an appropriate dust suppression product along the unsealed section of Lennigans Road, Nanango, twice within the financial year at 6 monthly intervals as a trial project to test the effectiveness of such as to dust suppression, and installation of appropriate drainage infrastructure on Lennigans Road, Nanango, to support road renewal works, Burt Road buoy, ripping, compacting and gravel sheeting as required, and application of an appropriate dust suppression product along the unsealed section of Burt Road buoy twice within the financial year at 6 monthly intervals as a trial project to test the effectiveness of such as to dust suppression and installation of appropriate drainage infrastructure on Burt Road buoy to support road renewal works. So I'd now like to move that. And is anyone, do we have a seconder at this stage? Councillor Jones, thank you. I might just offer the opportunity to Acting General Manager Lowe, perhaps just to speak to this, and then we'll go to the floor. Thank you, General Manager.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Yes, Kevin, our works manager, is in the process of assessing the different types of dust suppressions available at the moment. There's several on the market, several work, maybe, several don't. So it's really there's a report coming back to council on that shortly, Mayor. Yeah.
Thank you, General Manager. So, I suppose what I'm proposing here is that obviously we allow our manager of works to do that costing and do that assessment, and then this would come to a council meeting whereby it would be considered as part of the CapEx budget. But I would expect that council would want to see the costings, and you would want to understand the potential effectiveness of this, because if it's going to have adverse effects on the road or it's not going to be effective, obviously I'll be fully supportive of council taking the officer's advice on that. So anyway, Councillor Jones.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. So in listening to your comments there, that the 22-23 capital budget includes the following, but you then indicated just then that we need to get the costings back. So to me, the way I read that is that we want to include that in the following unsealed road renewals project for the CapEx budget for 22-23. I'm not against any of these. Lennington's Road, happy. I'll put it out there. I'm not a big fan of the dust suppressants, as Acting GM Lowe has just indicated. Not a lot of success has come of them, and they do wear out, and some quicker than others and all that sort of stuff, and it does add up to a cost. You've got to do it twice a year. I'd like to leave Burt Road buoy on there simply because, and my rationale here is the fact that it's LRCI funding that we were proposing with what the works and all that sort of stuff with the recommendation that went through the last committee meeting. And I'd like to leave that on the table simply because we've got LRCI funding workshops and Works for Queensland workshops coming up in the very, very near future, which we need to address, I believe, Mr CEO, very quickly, because it will have a lot of significance and effect on our operational budget and all that sort of stuff right across the council. So I'd be happy to leave Burt Road and decide, because I've had conversations, I've got further information come back to me in regards to that, and I'm certainly having second thoughts on the way I voted. And I would like to leave Burt Road there simply because it's under LRCI funding. Work through that workshop and see where that money will end up falling. Lennington's Road and Anango, happy to support that because we've committed to it. We said that was one of the roads that we identified as going out there to put there. So look, I'm happy for a report to come back with the costings and all that, but I probably can't support the fact that it says there that the 22-23 capital budget includes the following unsealed road renewal projects. Whether you consider putting in a report with costings and all that, and the commentary of mine around Burt Road with the LRCI funding workshops that are coming up, whether or not.
Yeah, thanks very much, Councillor Jones. I think you raised some really good points there. There's probably been a lot happen too since this sort of went in. So I'd be happy to change the motion that is that council, the committee recommends that council considers, subject to receipt of report from manager of works. Sorry, Bree. Yeah, the committee recommends that council considers, comma, subject to receipt of a report from the manager of works, comma, inclusion of the following projects in the 2022 capital budget CapEx, full stop then, Bree, you can take the rest out. I'm comfortable with that change to the motion. Councillor Jones, does that, just get you time to have a look at that, are you comfortable that addresses your concerns?
I guess, like I say, just on that Burt Road with the LRCI funding, I guess that we're just asking for a report to come back from the manager of works. That'll include costings and all that, will it, obviously?
Yeah, perhaps we could put, in receipt of a report from Measure Work as to cost estimates and the effectiveness of dust suppression products, comma. Yes, that's fine. Your thoughts there, Councillor Jones?
Yeah, no, I'm comfortable with that. Yep.
Thank you. Well, I'm happy to change that motion if that's okay, Mr. CEO, in terms of process. Councillor Jones, you comfortable with that as a seconder? Confirm that. Councillor Potter, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm just curious through you, Mr Mayor, with regards to doing these roads, because I do agree with Councillor Jones on this. I have too been contacted by some residents within Burt Road as well. So, but I'm just curious, how long does this ripping take? And then redoing the drainage and everything like that. So if this is done 2 times a year, I'm just curious as to how much it's going to put the residents of those streets out. Just curious. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Acting General Manager, thank you.
Through you, Mayor. So basically, the second visit of the site is basically like your normal traditional grader maintenance. So it's no more inconvenient. Just would like to make a point, Mayor, in for that report from Manager Works. We probably won't be able to claim the effectiveness of the dust suppressant because we are doing a trial. So it's just a point of in that motion there.
That being the case, thanks for that advice, Acting GM. I'm just wondering if we could say, as to cost estimates and options for dust suppressant and options for dust suppression, perhaps. Yeah. We'll just, and just for dust suppression, Bree. So if we just make that dust suppression and take the word products out, perhaps that keeps it a bit broader, doesn't it? More flexible for our engineers. Yeah.
Yeah, correct, Mayor. And we basically it is a trial to determine if they are effective. So that was my main concern. We can't represent that it's going to work. That's all.
Yes, very good point. Thank you, Acting General Manager. Councillor Jones, are you comfortable with that change, just to keep that a little bit more open-ended in terms of options? Thank you. Okay. Further speakers? Mr. CEO?
Thank you, Mayor. Through the Chair. Just with regard, Councillor Jones just raised a point about LRCI and timing. So the report has been recommended from the committee and will go to next week's ordinary meeting. So there will be. We do have a hard deadline for LRCI of June, so to finalise this current round. So timing is getting quite not urgent, but it is getting quite. This matter will have to be dealt with. And then the other consideration is when. I'm not prosecuting an argument for the merit of any road or not, but also then the ability to actually deliver the works in the LRC timeline, given that we've got several different discussion points, I suppose, on some of the roads. So it will be for councillors to make the rightful decision next week on the LRCI resolution, or not delay, but to postpone till May if that's what you choose as a meeting. But yeah, LRCI will have to be dealt with by June or in June at the absolute latest.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. So we just need to take that into context in terms of those discussions next week. Okay, so further speakers? Councillor Jones.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So, Mr. CEO, in a general meeting, as we will be in next week, to discuss the LRCI and all that sort of stuff. I'd like to have, that's going to be a full-on discussion with a lot of conversation around that LRCI funding and Works for Queensland and expenditure and all that. Having a bad start, excuse me. Yeah, with the expenditure and the roads discussion and in particular, and where we go with buildings and properties and all the other proposed funding options. Is it suitable to have that discussion in that? Look, I'm not saying that it's not, but it's going to be an exhaustive, I think it's going to be an exhaustive conversation around that LRCI funding and, with Burt Road issue and all that sort of stuff, because that was fully funded. How we do that, there's a lot to that conversation.
Thanks, Mayor, through the chair. Works for Queensland's a different program, so I'd probably drop that one out of the conversation. It is, LRCI is, it's at the end of the day, the ordinary meeting is the decision point, and it will have to be discussed at the ordinary meeting at some stage. That's vague, isn't it? But yeah, no, it will need to come to an ordinary meeting for the final decision point. So the discussion will have to be had at an ordinary meeting. So I suppose, to my mind, it's been a fair bit of discussion about LRCI. There's been aspects of it allocated, and it's the final body. Again, not getting into the policy aspect of it, but there's final body. But the mechanics of it is we will need to make a decision, and there will be a decision point very, very shortly so that we can progress it. So it's on the agenda for next week, and then, as I said, we're, as officers, in council's hands as to where you want to go with it.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Just, I think that there was two projects: the George Street car park and the Black Butt. I think it was 300,000 included for the Black Butt CBD, and the rest of it was the 2.2 million was either Burt Road or the 15 other roads that were on that list of recommended by the staff. So I didn't think there was anything more than that for that LRCI money. That was just my thoughts.
I'll just clarify too for council. Under our policy, where a resolution adopted by council has been acted upon by officers, there is no capacity to change or rescind that motion. Mr. CEO will certainly correct me. So, for example, Black Butt, where commitments have been made to expenditure, if George Street has been acted on as a resolution of council, there would be no capacity to redress those. They would have to continue as resolved. However, as you point out, Councillor Duff, perhaps, yes, certainly the Burt Road decision, and also the apportionment of that expense across those 15 roads, or discussion with officers around that, is still to happen, because we haven't got a council resolution on those yet. So that will be on the agenda. That is on the agenda for next Wednesday, Mr. CEO, and will need to be discussed by council, and one way or the other, some action taken on that particular agenda item. Councillor Jones.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So just also, can you just clarify, we've mentioned that the 2.2 through you to the Council Duff that referred to, does that mean that is just, other councillors can bring other issues to the table for LRCI funding if required? That is not the set agenda for that conversation, is that fair to say? Or the 15 roads that the councillor is referring to, that can be, there could be other roads, there could be other funding options, so it's not just set in stone that is what we're coming to discuss. There's other options that can be brought to the table at next week's
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Jones. Yeah, subject to Mr. CEO's advice, the agenda item relates to the allocation of funding under LRCI, and there is a bullet point there in relation to Burt's Road. So I would have thought that there would be scope for council to have a discussion in relation to the allocation of that $2.2 million. But certainly would stand corrected, Mr. CEO. Your thoughts?
Mayor, thanks, Mayor, and through the chair. That's correct. So the LRCI allocation is, so there was certainly the discussion of the list of roads for renewal reseal, I think was the terminology we used, without having the report in front of me. And then there is the addition of the Burt Road bullet point. The agenda item is from the committee, which brings back the allocation of the remaining funds between the Burt Road project and then the renewal reseal. The final decision point is quite rightly the ordinaries meeting. The only thing I would ask is if there is, of all councillors, if there is other aspects or projects that people wish, if they're able, even if it's not fully circulated, but send it through to Bree for the agenda for the minutes, or ideally it would be circulated to all parties, but yeah, just so we've got it all, so we're not trying to add things in and through a typo or notes that we end up with something quite not slightly right. So yeah.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Yeah, so if we do have other thoughts, matters you'd like to discuss next Wednesday, if you can put them through to Bree, to Executive Services, so that we can be prepared for that, that'd be much appreciated. But I think it's clear, yeah, there will be an open discussion next Wednesday on the $2.2 million remaining in LRCI, which has not yet been allocated by resolution of council. Yeah. And as Mr. CEO has indicated, we have to also be aware that there is a deadline on this. We've got to get this information locked in before June. So I would certainly be encouraging council to address the matter next Wednesday if we can, so we can give our staff the opportunity to respond to the department. Councillor Duff.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, to be fair to the other councillors, I think that if there are any other projects that any other councillor wants to put forward, it should be shared with all councillors, so that there's nothing coming out from left field at the last minute, because this is going to be a decision-making meeting, not a committee meeting, so there won't be any chance to negotiate or look at other options. We'll be just having to make decisions. So I just think that, to be fair, that they should be circulated to all councillors.
Thank you, Councillor. Take that on board. And I think Mr. CEO was probably sort of inferring that anyway, suggesting that. So councillors happy to do that, just to CC in their colleagues if you are going to provide information to Exec Services in advance of that debate. Thank you. Okay, well, we've got that there. If everyone's comfortable with the discussion, no further speakers. I'm happy to go to the vote. Those in favour? Carry unanimously. Thank you all. Committee, that ends today's meeting, and I'll now call the meeting closed at 9:55 a.m. Thank you for your participation.